Singapore, the land that's known for expensive properties. Yes, so many of the people in Singapore feel that the property in Singapore is unaffordable to them. And because of that, there is a bunch of developers in Johor that are building houses targeting for Singaporeans to come in and buy property there instead. But here's the question, right? Will Singaporeans actually really cross over just to buy a property and stay in Johor while working in Singapore? That is really a big question to ask. So, in order to find out will Singaporeans actually really buy a property in Johor, we've decided to ask Singaporeans themselves. Let's go.
We also know that recently the property and those rental in Singapore is quite expensive. So how do you think about that?
That's a tricky question. Obviously, as a Singaporean, I do worry about the property prices, especially when I get older. I do get my own apartment. There is like this thing called BTO, which I'm sure you've heard of, but the profits are just getting smaller and smaller. So I do think that Singapore may approximate to like Hong Kong property, like in the sense of very small property but sky high prices. So I don't know. I think there's a limit whereby Singaporeans have to think that we are just limited about our land and we have to expand our land. Of course, there were talks of like living underground, but if you study like the biology of humans, just living underground is just not very healthy because we need the circadian rhythm of the sunlight. So I think Singaporeans will look around and figure out like how can we expand our land.
I think it's always been expensive. It just got jacked up after COVID even more, right? But I guess given like government support and everything, if you're like a regular working adult, you can still afford one, even if as long as you're making like average income, you can afford a HDB eventually. So I don't think it's like crazy difficult, but of course it'll be better if it's cheaper, right? But it's still affordable lah. I wouldn't say it's unaffordable. Most people can hope to get a house in their lifetime, but rental-wise, it's really expensive.
I feel that this is something that for youngsters we are pretty worried because like how do I say, home ownership is something that is a need rather than just a want. So for us youngsters, we also want to have our own space. Like for other countries, most of the youngsters tend to move out after a certain age or like after marriage, but as the cost of living increase, it might be relatively difficult for them, for us to get a space of our own. And I believe like, I hope that the government would actually put out more policies out there to at least keep the price affordable for us.
I think that it's honestly it's not very good for Singaporeans definitely, but I think that mostly it's because a lot of people are also buying, or the richer ones in Singapore are definitely buying more properties, and therefore the prices are definitely skyrocketing. And as for me, what I feel it's quite bad for middle income to low income families, and definitely different measures can be placed to help those people in terms of affording a house. But at the same time, I feel in terms of what we can afford and how our incomes are like, we can generally afford those normal housing, so it's still okay. But definitely more and more countermeasures can be introduced lah.
I mean, speaking for exchange students, it was a struggle for us to find housing here, and I can't imagine how it is for everyone that is living here. We're at least here for 4 months, so for us on a short contract, it was still manageable, but overall the prices are a lot.
Yeah, because the pricing in Singapore, the economy is higher, right? So the standard of living is high. So definitely the rental here are much more expensive.
Wait, we are talking about buying property in Johor, and one of the most common things that we hear from Singaporeans is that the consideration of retiring in Malaysia. However, that's a question. How much money do you really need if you want to retire? Well, if you want to find out about that, do go to our website www.mrmoneytv, subscribe to our newsletter, and we will give you a free retirement calculator so that you can calculate how much money do you actually need to save up for your retirement. Now, back to our video.
If you have extra money, will you invest on the property in Malaysia by any chance?
I wouldn't invest in property in Malaysia, but I did consider of buying a property in Malaysia. But physically there's a limit of you need a minimum of 1 million ringgit to buy, and unfortunately right now I don't have 1 million ringgit, so that's why I didn't buy. But I would say no, because I think you can put the capital to better uses elsewhere. Because if you put money into property, you are betting essentially that the prices appreciate over time, and that's very dependent on again how well the country develop, which I can't influence. And once I put the money in, it's like kind of stuck in the sense that I can sell to someone else. If I'm selling to someone else, probably means that I don't think it's very good. Then you have to find someone who thinks that it's very good, and that will be there's less liquidity. Yeah.
Nah.
I would invest in the sense that I like the way of life in Malaysia in terms of it's more relaxed. But I won't put it invest, but rather I would like to own one, because I won't say I look for monetary return, but rather to have a space whereby I can go for a short vacation there. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I've seen how the properties are there. I like over there, at least some. And I've been talking to some of my friends. It's honestly a good investment lah. It can be a good investment. Yeah, provided we have the money and provided that the place that we feel that is we can see a long-term future in that Malaysia place lah.
Well, number one, you want it closer to you, or at least in somewhere where you know someone to help you run. I don't know anyone in Malaysia, number one. I don't know, man, it's just never crossed my mind as Malaysia being a very lucrative place to do investments. There are way better options, in my opinion. Yeah.
I mean, again, I have to go to Malaysia first to say. I wouldn't want to make a decision without knowing a lot about the country. I've been here in Singapore for 1 month, and in that month I've tried to read about its history, their governance and all of that. So if I go to Malaysia, I will do the same and then decide.
Yep. I will, yeah. I will if I have the extra cash.
Why?
Why? Because the standard of living there is low, and the place are very quiet lah. Some places are very nice.
Unlikely. I mean, look at the Singaporeans who had invested in Malaysia properties years ago, and you know how the currency exchange has depreciated over the years as well. So money in, money out is negative. Yeah, unlikely.
And that is what Singaporeans have said about staying in Malaysia and buying a property there. However, I know that there are many of you guys who are out there watching this video, Singaporean. What do you truly think about this? You probably have your own opinion. Do leave us your thoughts in the comments below. Share with us, what do you really think about buying a property in Malaysia? Or maybe you are a Johorian and you own some properties there aiming to sell to Singaporeans. You can also tell us your experience in the comments. And for those of you out there, if you enjoy this kind of content, talking about Singapore and Malaysia, comparing it, well, do put an emoji of a Singapore flag down there as well, so we will know that this is the kind of content you like. Definitely we're gonna make more lor. See you next week.